Caitlin Clark joined Sunday Night Basketball for 2 NBA games. Caitlin Clark is headed to the NBA, at least for a couple of nights. NBC announced Tuesday that Clark, the Indiana Fever star with an enormous following within the game, is joining the network's pregame coverage for its debut of Sunday Night Basketball.
Stop scrolling, because what you're about to hear didn't just make headlines. It broke the internet. Caitlin Clark didn't step into NBA broadcasting quietly. She walked in and shook the entire sports world. One moment, fans tuned in expecting a normal game broadcast. The next, social media exploded. Twitter timelines flooded. Clips went viral in minutes. Comment sections turned into war zones. Because Caitlin Clark's NBA broadcasting debut wasn't just good, it was historic. This wasn't some rookie learning on the job moment. This was confidence. This was command. This was a basketball mind so sharp that even longtime NBA analysts had to take notes. Every take landed. Every breakdown felt elite. And every sentence reminded fans why Caitlin Clark isn't just changing the game on the court. She's redefining it off the court too. Fans couldn't believe what they were hearing. Former players reacted live. Media personalities scrambled to respond. And suddenly, one question was everywhere. Did Caitlin Clark just raise the standard for NBA broadcasting? Because let's be real, this debut wasn't hype. It was substance. She read defenses like a veteran coach. She explained plays like a professor. She connected with casual fans and hardcore hoop heads at the same time. That's not normal. That's rare. And here's the part nobody expected. This moment didn't just spotlight Caitlin Clark. It exposed how outdated sports media has been. In one night, she proved that the future of basketball conversation sounds smarter, faster, and more fearless. Love her or hate her, one thing is undeniable. Caitlin Clark didn't join NBA broadcasting. She disrupted it. When Caitlin Clark stepped into NBA broadcasting for the first time, nobody expected history to be made. Fans thought they were tuning in for another routine broadcast. The same recycled takes, the same predictable commentary, the same safe opinions wrapped in polished media language. But within minutes, it became clear. This wasn't a normal debut. This was a statement. Almost instantly, social media began to react. Clips were cut. Quotes were tweeted. Reaction videos started popping up. And suddenly, Caitlin Clark's name wasn't just trending in women's basketball circles. It was dominating NBA discourse. Because what people were witnessing wasn't hype. It was preparation. It was basketball IQ. It was a level of clarity and confidence that felt shocking, especially coming from someone making her very first appearance in an NBA broadcast booth. From the moment she spoke, her voice carried authority. Not forced, not rehearsed, earned. She didn't talk around the game, she talked through it. Instead of surface-level observations, Caitlin broke down spacing, timing, defensive rotations, and offensive reads in real time. She explained why a play worked before the replay even finished. She predicted adjustments before they happened. And she did it without sounding robotic or condescending. That's when fans realized something important. Caitlin Clark wasn't learning NBA broadcasting. NBA broadcasting was catching up to Caitlin Clark. And that realization hit hard. Because for years, fans have complained that modern sports coverage feels watered down, overproduced, too focused on narratives and not enough on the game itself. Analysts arguing for clicks instead of insight. Hot takes replacing actual basketball understanding. Then Caitlin Clark shows up, and suddenly the broadcast feels smarter. More intentional, more engaging, more honest. And that scared people. Because moments like this don't just create praise, they expose gaps. They force uncomfortable comparisons. And they raise a dangerous question for traditional media voices. If this is her first NBA broadcast, what does that say about everyone else? The reactions were immediate. Fans flooded comment sections saying things like, "She explains the game better than most former players. Why haven't we had analysis like this before? She sounds like a coach, not a talking head." Even veteran NBA watchers admitted something felt different. This wasn't charisma alone. This wasn't popularity carrying her through. This was someone who deeply understands basketball, at every level, and knows how to communicate it clearly. And that ability didn't come overnight. Caitlin Clark's rise didn't start in the broadcast booth. It was built long before, in gyms, film rooms, pressure moments, and constant scrutiny. She spent years being analyzed, criticized, doubted, and challenged at the highest level of attention women's basketball has ever seen. And that pressure forged something powerful: poise. So when she sat behind the mic, she didn't sound nervous. She didn't overtalk. She didn't try to prove she belonged. She already knew she did. And here's where things get interesting. Because while fans were celebrating, others were uncomfortable. Not because she failed, but because she succeeded too easily. Some critics tried to downplay it. Others shifted the conversation. A few questioned whether the reaction was overblown. But the internet wasn't buying it, because the clips didn't lie. Every viral moment came from substance. Every trending quote came from insight. And every positive reaction came from people who genuinely learned something while watching. That's rare in sports media. Very rare. And that's why this debut mattered far beyond one broadcast. Because Caitlin Clark didn't just deliver commentary, she delivered a new standard. A standard where analysts don't hide behind cliches. A standard where basketball knowledge matters more than volume. A standard where explaining the game clearly is valued more than shouting the loudest. And once fans experience that, there's no going back. That's when the bigger picture came into focus. Caitlin Clark represents a generational shift, not just in how the game is played, but in how it's discussed. She's part of a new era where players aren't boxed into one lane, where intelligence, media presence, and leadership extend beyond the court. And the NBA world wasn't fully prepared for that. Because when someone like Caitlin steps into a traditionally guarded space and excels immediately, it challenges old hierarchies. It forces people to reconsider who gets to be an expert. And it exposes how often opportunity, not ability, has defined sports media roles. This wasn't about gender. This wasn't about hype. This was about competence meeting opportunity, and the result being undeniable. And the numbers backed it up. Engagement spiked. Clips spread faster than expected. Younger fans tuned in, not just for the game, but for the analysis. And suddenly, Caitlin Clark's voice wasn't just welcome, it was demanded. That kind of impact doesn't fade. It builds. And this was only part one of the story. Because once the internet realized Caitlin Clark could dominate the mic the same way she dominates the court, the conversation shifted from surprise to expectation. And expectations are dangerous, especially when someone keeps meeting them. Coming up next, we'll break down why this debut hit so hard, how it exposed cracks in modern sports media, and why Caitlin Clark's presence may permanently change how basketball is broadcast. Because if this was just the beginning, the rest of the league and the media world better be ready. Fire eyes. By the time Caitlin Clark's first NBA broadcasting appearance ended, the shock had already worn off. What replaced it was something far more dangerous. Expectation. Because once fans realized this wasn't a fluke, the conversation changed completely. It wasn't, wow, she did great for her first time. It became, why isn't every broadcast like this? And that's when the real tension started. For years, NBA media has followed a familiar formula. Former players recycling the same stories. Analysts leaning into exaggerated personas. Loud debates replacing thoughtful breakdowns. It worked, until it didn't. Caitlin Clark's debut unintentionally pulled the curtain back. Without attacking anyone. Without calling anyone out. Without trying to prove a point. She simply did the job better. And when that happens, excuses disappear. Because Caitlin didn't rely on hot takes. She didn't chase viral controversy. She didn't dumb the game down. Instead, she trusted the audience to understand, and guided them when they didn't. That alone separated her instantly. She spoke about reads, not just results. She explained why a defense collapsed instead of just saying it broke down. She pointed out off-ball movement that cameras rarely focus on. And she framed mistakes as teaching moments, not punchlines. That approach resonated deeply with fans who've been quietly craving smarter coverage. And suddenly, a harsh truth emerged. The audience was never the problem. The coverage was. Social media reactions reflected that shift in real time. Fans didn't just praise Caitlin, they questioned the system. Why had this level of insight been missing for so long? Why did it take someone outside the usual media pipeline to raise the bar? Those questions made people uncomfortable, because they didn't have easy answers. Caitlin Clark's presence exposed how often sports media underestimates its own audience. It revealed that depth doesn't kill engagement, it creates it. And it showed that clarity doesn't alienate casual fans, it invites them in. That's a dangerous revelation for an industry built on volume over value. And here's the part no one wants to admit out loud. Caitlin Clark didn't just outperform expectations, she outperformed credentials. She didn't need decades in a locker room to explain the game. She didn't lean on championship rings or old rivalries. Her authority came from something far more threatening: competence in the present. That's why the reaction felt so intense. Because when someone succeeds without following the traditional path, it forces everyone else to justify why the path existed in the first place. And the justifications weren't convincing. Some critics tried to shift the narrative. They said she was overpraised. Others suggested the moment was inflated by her popularity. A few downplayed the impact entirely. But those arguments collapsed under one simple reality. The clips kept going viral. People weren't sharing her because they liked her. They were sharing her because she made them see the game differently. That's influence. And influence changes power dynamics. For the first time in a long time, fans began imagining a future where broadcasts are led by thinkers, not performers. Where explanation matters more than ego. Where the booth feels like a classroom, not a debate stage. And Caitlin Clark suddenly became the symbol of that future. Not because she asked to be, not because she campaigned for it, but because she earned it. This debut also challenged another long-standing assumption: that elite players can't always translate their knowledge verbally. Caitlin shattered that myth effortlessly. She didn't overcomplicate. She didn't simplify. She balanced both, and that balance is rare. It requires understanding not just basketball, but communication itself. That's why coaches loved it. That's why analysts paid attention. That's why executives quietly took notes. Because moments like this don't fade, they set precedent. And precedent changes hiring decisions. It changes production choices. It changes who gets opportunities. It changes what audiences expect. That's the ripple effect Caitlin Clark triggered without even trying. And the most ironic part? She didn't dominate the conversation by talking the most. She dominated it by making every word matter. That restraint made her presence even louder. As the days passed, it became clear this wasn't just a trending topic. It was a turning point. Sports media insiders began acknowledging it indirectly. Some praised her fresh perspective. Others admitted the broadcast felt different. Different is a polite word for disruptive. Because Caitlin Clark didn't fit neatly into the box. She wasn't just a guest. She wasn't just a crossover moment. She wasn't just a headline. She was proof of concept. Proof that the game deserves smarter storytelling. Proof that fans reward substance. Proof that the future of basketball media doesn't have to look like the past. And once that proof exists, it can't be ignored. The real question now isn't whether Caitlin Clark belongs in NBA broadcasting. That question has already been answered. The real question is this: how long can the old system survive once fans know something better is possible? Because after hearing Caitlin Clark break down the game with clarity, confidence, and credibility, it's impossible to unhear it. The bar has been raised, and everyone else has to clear it. Coming up next, we'll examine what this moment means long-term, for Caitlin Clark's career, for NBA media, and for the next generation of voices waiting for their shot. Because this debut wasn't an ending. It was a warning, and the entire sports world felt it. Fire eyes. By the time the noise settled, one thing was clear. Caitlin Clark's NBA broadcasting debut wasn't a moment. It was a marker. A line drawn between the past and what comes next. Because once the internet calmed down and the hot takes faded, a deeper realization remained. The kind that doesn't trend for a day, but reshapes expectations for years. This wasn't about Caitlin Clark proving she could talk basketball. She proved something far more important. The future of sports media doesn't belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to the sharpest mind. And once fans tasted that future, they weren't willing to give it back. This is how real change begins. Not with press releases, not with announcements, but with one undeniable performance that forces everyone to adapt. Networks noticed. Executives noticed. Producers noticed. Not because social media demanded it, but because engagement proved it. Viewers stayed longer. Clips were rewatched. Comments weren't arguing, they were learning. That's a rare metric in modern sports content. And metrics don't lie. Caitlin Clark didn't just deliver analysis, she delivered retention. And in today's media landscape, that's power. Because retention changes everything. It changes who gets booked. It changes who gets promoted. It changes who becomes the face of a broadcast. This debut quietly shifted internal conversations from, should we try something different, to, how fast can we evolve? And that evolution won't stop with Caitlin Clark. She opened a door, and behind it stands an entire generation of players who understand the game on a deeper level and know how to communicate it. Players who grew up breaking down film. Players who understand spacing analytics. Players who respect the audience's intelligence. Caitlin didn't just step into the booth. She validated a new blueprint. One where credibility is built in real time. One where explanation beats exaggeration. One where fans feel included instead of talked down to. And that blueprint is dangerous to outdated systems. Because once standards rise, shortcuts disappear. The era of coasting on reputation alone is ending. Fans now expect insight. They expect preparation. They expect clarity. And Caitlin Clark showed them what that looks like. This moment also reshaped how we view athlete longevity. For decades, the conversation has been binary. You play, then you disappear, or you chase media relevance through personality alone. Caitlin Clark presented a third path. One where basketball intelligence becomes the career. Where understanding outlives athleticism. Where influence extends beyond the final buzzer. That path is powerful and sustainable. And it's especially meaningful for young athletes watching this unfold. They're seeing proof that their voices matter. That preparation matters. That they don't have to fit a stereotype to be respected. That they can be analytical and authentic at the same time. That matters more than people realize. Because cultural shifts don't start at the top. They start with visibility. And Caitlin Clark just made a new version of success visible. Of course, with change comes resistance. Some will cling to the old ways. Some will dismiss this as a trend. Some will wait, hoping the moment fades. But moments like this don't fade. They compound. Every future broadcast Caitlin appears on will be judged against this debut. Every new analyst will be compared to this standard. And every network decision will carry the weight of knowing fans have seen what's possible. There's no undo button for that. The most powerful part of this story isn't Caitlin Clark herself. It's what she represents. She represents a media ecosystem where knowledge is the main currency, where respect is earned through preparation, where the game is treated like the complex, beautiful system it truly is. And that ecosystem benefits everyone. Fans understand more. Players are represented more accurately. The game is elevated. That's not disruption for the sake of disruption. That's progress. So when people look back at Caitlin Clark's NBA broadcasting debut years from now, they won't remember a single quote or one viral clip. They'll remember the shift. They'll remember the moment fans realized they deserved better. And got it. They'll remember the night sports media quietly changed direction. And Caitlin Clark will always be part of that story. Not because she demanded it. Not because she chased it. But because she showed up prepared and delivered. This wasn't a test run. It was a warning shot. The future of basketball conversation has arrived. It sounds smarter. It moves faster. And it isn't going anywhere. And for everyone watching, players, fans, analysts, networks, the message was clear. Adapt or be left behind. Fire eyes. If you've made it this far, you already know this wasn't just another sports story. This was a moment that changed how basketball is talked about. And who gets to lead that conversation. So now the question isn't about Caitlin Clark anymore. It's about you. Because the future of sports media is shaped by what fans support. By what gets watched, shared, and talked about. And every click sends a message about what kind of coverage you want more of. If you believe basketball deserves smarter analysis, hit that like button. If you're tired of recycled takes and empty debates, subscribe right now. And if Caitlin Clark's debut made you see the game differently, drop a comment and say why. Your voice matters more than you think. This channel exists for fans who love the details. The reads. The moments that don't always make the highlight reel, but decide the game. And we're just getting started. More breakdowns. More real conversations. More moments that expose how the game is truly evolving. And trust me, what's coming next is even bigger. So don't just watch from the sidelines. Be part of the shift. Be part of the audience that demands better, smarter, more honest basketball coverage. Because when fans raise the standard, the entire game rises with it. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. Share this video with someone who loves basketball as much as you do. And stay locked in, because the next story is already unfolding. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. Fire basketball.